Welcome back after a long break to Meet Your Alderman, a University of Chicago public policy podcast. I'm Jeff Biddle, coming to you from the beautiful Keller Center recording studio at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. On the program today is Alderwoman Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth of the 48th Ward. We had a great conversation about the neighborhoods she represents, transit access, and the homeless crisis, among other important issues. Enjoy the interview. All right, well, we are honored today to have with us Alderwoman Leni Manaa-Hoppenworth of the 48th Ward. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for having me on.
All right, so before we dive into the more policy-related questions, we first want to get a little bit of background about you. So you're about a year, a little more into your term. So why did you decide to run?
It's been since May 15th, so not quite a year yet, but it does feel like every day is a year sometimes. So much happens in a day. But it's been a very exciting time. I'm one of many freshman colleagues who have come in this year, and I'm from the 48th Ward, which includes the Edgewater and Uptown areas and also Andersonville, but we're also made up of many different neighborhoods, very diverse across race and class, and even housing stock reflects that, our public schools as well. So it's been going great. So I'm really excited to talk to you more about it.
Well, great. So you said that every day can feel like a year. I know being on the council can be a lot, but as you are almost a year in, what so far has been the most fulfilling part of representing the ward?
Well, that's exactly it. Representing the ward, showing up when I'm needed to listen to concerns and issues, not just in the 48th Ward, but also in City Council. So it's been really an honor and a pleasure to be able to do that. And going into spaces knowing that I have the tie to possibilities, departments that can provide services, the ward office that can help immediately with issues that are happening across the ward, but also when we go to City Council and work on legislative issues and the city budget, taking a vote on things that matter, especially for progressive values that I hold, has been really a great pleasure. And to also call in to people, who might not be so plugged into, what's happening in City Council, and to champion all the things that we're doing. I think it's really an important time right now to find community. I think that is one of the reasons why I decided to get involved, specifically engaged in 2016. Because before that, I was living my life and I had 3 kids. They're older now in college and beyond, but I have a small business. And so it takes up a lot of energy and time to start a business, much less continue running one for 20 years. And so that's what I was doing. And then 2016 happened and I could not ignore what was happening, which was there was a crack that happened in our systems where it was allowable for candidates to spew anti-immigrants, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ language and hate speech, and it was becoming acceptable. And I refused that notion that this is the way that we want to work as a society. That was not what I aspired my children to live in. I want my children to live in a world where they feel welcome. I'm a woman of color, the daughter of Filipino immigrants. And I'm a queer woman of color, a mother. And, I live in Andersonville, which is considered one of the more inclusive areas for LGBTQ plus people. But Edgewater and Uptown and Andersonville together make up one of the most diverse wards in the city of Chicago. And I'm talking about across ethnicity and race and class. And sexual identity, all of that. And so when 2016 happened, there were so many people in this ward, especially women, especially older women like me, who said, I feel like my rights are under attack and I need to go do something. And so that's what I did. I organized the Women's March from Illinois. And together with four others, we brought 10,000 people from Illinois on buses and cars and other means of transportation to Washington, D.C. And then when we came back, we said, what are we going to do now? We're home. And we continued to keep in touch with each other and organize around other issues. And we ended up organizing a statewide Indivisible Illinois chapter, which was a commitment to ourselves and to our friends and our families and our communities that we would not ever go back. We're not going to go back on our reproductive rights. We're not going to go back on our immigration reform. We're not going to go back on transforming the way we look at our carceral system. And we're not going to go back on keeping the integrity of our electoral systems and our democracy. And so we organize across the state of Illinois, not just in Chicago. And it has really given so many people hope, especially, not just in Chicago. I'm talking about very rural districts all the way to the tip of the state where they have less resources than we do. They don't have like advocacy groups like Planned Parenthood or other social justice groups at the ready as we do in Chicago. These are small rural towns, and they look to Chicago and what we're doing to protect our systems, and that includes our elections. So I was really proud to organize around Indivisible Illinois. I also got involved locally because that was the purpose. We have to organize locally on our progressive values to have an impact nationally. So we got to know our congressional representatives. So in my area, it's the 9th Congressional District, and it happens to be my congressperson is Jan Schakowsky, and she's one of the more progressive representatives in Congress. And so that's the reason why I knock on her door every day and say, Jan, do a better job. Like, I don't know what she would do with that. So we supported her. We said, thank you for all the things that you're doing, Representative Schakowsky, and what can we do to help? Well, what we could do to help is to get out the vote. And so that's what we've been working on, protecting the ability to have access to the ballot, our electoral systems, and getting people engaged, especially registering to vote, especially young people in the 9th Congressional Districts and locally. The other thing that I did was I ran for local school council. I'm a product of our Chicago public schools, and so are my kids. And the local school councils are the most hyper local form of governance in the city of Chicago. And it's a way to protect our public systems, which starts at, for many families in our public schools. So I was really proud to serve there at Jones. And then also I got involved more with our local Chamber of Commerce because I'm a small business owner. And I think all those things, getting involved and also inviting people in, makes for safer communities, because then you get to know other families, you get to know other business owners, you just get to know your neighborhood. And so when opportunities arose, like the fact that a third of city council decided to either retire or run for other office or, just not run anymore, it opened up a door for so many progressives to step up, including me. And you might not be able to see me, but I'm a short, brown, gray-haired woman, identifies as queer with glasses, and some people might not look at me and think, that person really looks like an authoritative figure, and she might do really well in city government. But other people said, look, you were born in Chicago, you are from Chicago, you're a lifelong lover of Chicago communities, including your own, and you are a good listener, and you want not only your family to thrive, but your community to thrive. And so they encouraged me to step up and think about running for office.
Well, thank you so much for all of that. I mean, that's so informative about your background, your approach to your role. And I think you're absolutely right that it has been a time of immense change in the country, in the city, on the council, and in the 48th Ward. And along that line, I'd point out that you are distinct in a lot of ways from your predecessor, Harry Osterman. I mean, he was a 12-year incumbent from a political family. You hadn't held office before. You are, as you mentioned, a queer identifying woman of color. He was not. He also endorsed your opponent. So, how do you think the transition between aldermen has affected the way that you approach your day-to-day role and the way that you see the issues?
I have to say that it was a, a great experience to run with 9 other candidates for this role. A lot of community leaders stepped up. I was one of 2 women who ran, 2 women of color who ran. And and you're right, I did not get support of the previous alder. The transition has been really great because people are supportive of leadership in the 48th ward because they want the 48th ward to succeed. That's really what it comes down to. We all want to succeed and we all want the same things. Of course, during a campaign, people are going to choose their favorites, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, somebody is going to get elected, and we all have a choice as a community to either work together or not. And most people that I talk to, either in the office here on Bryn Mawr at 1129 West Bryn Mawr, or on the sidewalks or on the streets of Edgewater, Andersonville, and Uptown, wants not only the 48th Ward to succeed and their neighborhoods to succeed, but for Chicago to succeed. And that's what we're doing now. Really, it's been a terrific experience because I feel very fortunate where we're positioned in Chicago. The 48th Ward is anchored by, of course, the lakefront, but to the north of me, I have Alderwoman Maria Haddon, and I have to the west of me, Alderman Andre Vasquez. And to the southwest of me, I have Alderman Matt Martin. And to the south of me, I have Alderwoman Angela Clay. And all of us together make up a region where we want to work collaboratively with each other. And that includes really important things, systemic things, network things like actual infrastructure, such as the Red Line reconstruction, which runs through several of our wards, or a bicycling grid, not only on the north side, but across the city of Chicago, and also protecting workers' rights, for instance, and addressing the homelessness crisis that we have right now, as we're also having housing crisis. And on top of that, the huge numbers of new arrivals that we're getting from across the border. But we are in it now, and we're working together, and we have to. We have to work together if we want to not only succeed, but make sure that people have the resources that they need to not only to live, but to thrive.
So you mentioned some legislative initiatives and issues that are very key before the council right now. And there are very comprehensive policy packages like Bring Chicago Home, Treatment Not Trauma, as always, the budget that have come before the council. And that the progressive movement that elected folks like yourself and Mayor Johnson and a number of other alders that you mentioned have really made possible. So I want to ask you a little bit about those. What would you say are your top legislative priorities on the council right now?
Well, you did mention them. Again, we live on the lakefront, and we see the impact of our housing crisis with people living in tent encampments across the lakefront and under our viaducts and on our streets. We have been in a housing crisis, and our system's really overwhelmed in our shelters for those who are experiencing houselessness. But not only that, it's not just the shelter, the building. It's really helping to provide them with the wraparound services that they need. And that's something that Treatment Not Trauma is going to address, as well as Bring Chicago Home. So all of these things have to work together. I know that I also am a renter in the 48th Ward in Andersonville, and lucky for me, 24 years ago, when we moved here, we found my friends were like, hey, check out this building that we live in. And the landlord at the time, the manager at the time, he sat down and he met with us and he's like, I really like you. Here, sign this. And it was on like a notebook paper that he ripped out of his pad and just like scribbled something on it. And that was our lease basically for many, many years. So we got a lease, a rental that is still considered affordable today because of that relationship. Now, not everybody is able to find that kind of affordable housing in the 48th ward now because of the pandemic that's forced a lot of people out of their homes. And then on top of the pandemic, we have an influx of new arrivals that are being bused from Texas who are awaiting placement from our temporary shelters into permanent housing. So those are the things that we're talking about right now. And all of these, those two things, because it's got to be housing first. Without housing, you can't do much of anything. You can't lock the door and sleep well at night. You can't shower so that you can go to work and then come back home and then lock the door and feel safe. Everybody needs that sense of security, but we can't stop there. We also have to provide the wraparound services that people need, including, for instance, drug addiction support or domestic violence support or help with children. And too many of our Chicago Public School students are considered housing unstable because they are couch surfing basically from home to home. So we have to address that and on many different levels. Bring Chicago Home is going to help because it's going to provide a dedicated funding solution towards homelessness, and Treatment Not Trauma is going to help to provide the wraparound services that people need, including opening up the mental health clinics that were closed in previous administrations. And then it can't stop there because we in Chicago have historically created division where some zip codes actually have 10 years less life expectancy because of disinvestment, because of systemic racism, because of our racist policies around housing. And so I'm really encouraged by the fact that we have a new office of reentry to help those who have been touched by the carceral system get the resources that they need so that they can live more stable lives. We also are introducing the Facebook ordinance, which has been championed by advocacy groups such as Good Kids Mad City. So the ordinance basically says in every community across Chicago, we can create resources for especially young people so that they can find better paths forward to find treatment for mental health, for instance, to find a pathway towards a great job with benefits, to find a way to prevent violence from happening. And this is the kind of thing that we need, a coordinated system that is blankets and embraces the whole city, not just parts of it. I'm a small business owner too, and I understand the need to protect workers' rights. Everybody deserves to have rest and time off and to be able to spend time with their families as needed, go to doctor's appointments. And so I was very proud to support paid time off ordinance as well. So there's a lot more that we're going to do in the next 3 years. I'm excited to do that. And I'm just really happy to talk about all of these things with you.
As a follow-up on the matter of public transportation, there was data that came out a few months ago that showed that CTA ridership had actually dipped below Los Angeles, which is, of course, a much less dense city than Chicago. And we had the issues with the yellow line over the past month or so. So what do you think is the right path forward to increasing transit use in the city? And why do you think that that ridership has failed to recover since the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I have to say, I have been taking public transit to get to city council and around the ward too. And the experience has been disheartening, to say the least. Sometimes I've used public transit for all the time that I've lived in Chicago, and I've never felt more need for attention. I need attention to this matter, and I need leadership, and I need an understanding of how we're going to help not only residents who use it, but also visitors who come to Chicago feel safe. I think there are a lot of changes that are going to be made, especially in the coming year, with a promise of more workers at CTA. That's going to help. But also underlying all of it is the fact that we are living in very precarious times where people are not getting what they need. You know, it makes sense when you think about it that somebody is living on the L. They have no place to go, and that's a warm place and it's a safe place for them. And I'm grateful also to advocacy groups like, for instance, the Night Ministry, who can meet folks at the end of the lines, for instance, up north at the end of the red line, where they can provide resources for people who are living on the trains. But that's the reason why we need to address our housing crisis right now. But not only that, to provide them with the wraparound services that they need. And it has to go hand in hand with coordinating with the CTA leadership to make sure that we are staffed appropriately and to make sure that we keep in constant communication with everybody about how we're making improvements to have better experiences on our public transit system, on the Ls and on the buses.
Great. Well, I want to ask just a few more questions about the 48th Ward before we let you get on with your day. One of which you've mentioned somewhat with your ward office. What are the best ways for residents of the 48th Ward to engage with their alderperson?
We have an office at 1129 West Bryn Mawr, so we welcome visitors all the time to walk in or make an appointment to see any of us. I have a fantastic team, Director of Public Safety, Director of Development, our communications team, and everybody here in the ward office is ready to listen and to learn, and also to help connect people to the services that they deserve. We also have bi-monthly virtual ward nights that people can jump on, because for some it's easier to jump on a call like this one instead of meeting in person right now. We also have town halls around certain issues. For instance, last night we had a town hall at St. Rita's on Broadway, which is half block down, with the CTA and site design, because we are imagining what we're going to do underneath the L tracks right now. We have a mile and a half of empty space that's going to be available underneath the L tracks for the first time in 100 years. So last night there were over 250 people who came to this in-person town hall to talk about all of the ideas that we have, whether it's tennis courts or pickleball courts or soccer field or a dog park or green space. Like, we want to build public spaces and communities where communities can gather safely and enjoy each other in the 48th Ward. And yeah, I'm really excited for these opportunities to happen. We also are, of course, available on social media. That's for informational purposes. But, there's nothing that replaces an in-person experience, which is one of the reasons why I would have preferred to be in person. But if we can't meet in person, I'd be happy to meet with you by Zoom, by phone, email, at town hall. Because that's really the essence of this role.
Great. And one more fun question for any listeners who may not be quite as familiar with the neighborhoods in your ward. What's your favorite place to grab a bite to eat or to drink?
Oh gosh, to eat or drink. Oh gosh, you're gonna have to ask me that like every day of this year, because every day is gonna be different. But I was just talking about how I love visiting my friends at Patio Beef, which is right down the street from us on Broadway, just to grab a bite and chat. And it's one of those community spaces where you walk in and you're going to see a familiar face, either behind the counter or standing in line waiting for their hot dog and fries. But I definitely recommend that place for a burger, and for me, Diet Coke.
Well, great. Those are all the questions we have. So thank you again very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it. the opportunity.
That's all we have for you today. Special thanks go out to Hannah Bernick for editing and production, Alex Kroger for research, the UC3P team, Eric Geber and Sarah Scott for their great work on the show for the past 2 years, and of course, you for listening. See you next time.